Hey, Triad Church Network, Brad Wright. So thrilled this week to come to you from our offices, but more importantly, sitting next to Andy Addis. And I know we've been blasting and promoting him coming and sharing with us for a while now. And if you weren't able to join us last night was just a sweet time of talking about rural ministry. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. And then later today, we're going to gather with some pastors and talk about what it means to renew and rest and these rhythms that we can get into. So we'll talk about that in just a second as well. But, Andy, I did some research. I did some reading. But what I really like to do is tell me how you got saved and then what God's done in your ministry up till now.
Well, two broad questions. I joke about my salvation story because I grew up in a non-Christian household. I joke a pagan household. Never met my dad, had a few stepdads. And there was a time in which the independent fundamental KJV bus ministry people from down the street were knocking on the door. And my stepdad used to have us turn off the lights and lay down to hide. So he got tired of that because it was Monday Night Football. They came by on Monday Night Visitation. And he said, "Hey, if I put my kid on your bus, will you leave us alone?" And that's when I became the sacrificial lamb for the family. So every Sunday they're eating pancakes, hanging out in their PJs, and I'm putting on a suit and tie, getting on this hot bus. But it was at Vacation Bible School that I think it was just fire insurance, but I did accept the Lord, and I'm thankful for it. I had a 2-year, 3-year stint going on that bus until there was a fairly legalistic moment that scared me, and I took it back to my mom, and she said, "You don't have to go anymore." So I bailed and wasn't a part. But I would go to camp every now and then. I would hit a church service or go to a youth group thing, but didn't really have a church. Then my senior year of high school, Holy Spirit just dropped on me. I was packing for college, honestly, and just not describing all the circumstances that were going on, but he basically dropped me to the floor of my garage in tears and said, "My way or your way." And I got up and I grew my hair long because Jesus had long hair, and told my boss I wanted to go to church. He said no, so I quit. And I just haven't looked back since then. Here's a little tidbit I don't always share. I walked into that church that I'd gone to camp with, and there was a 7th grade girl. I'm a big guy, right? But she says, "Who are you? What's going on?" And she discipled me all summer before I went to college. I mean, literally, take your Bible. No, this is what we do. Stand up now, sit down. And what's really funny is at the end of that summer, when I was getting ready to go away, the youth group was praying over Andy going to college. And my whole life had been turned around. She introduced me to her dad. And I went, "That's your dad?" And it was the same guy who'd prayed with me on the front of a Bluebird school bus at that other church.
Wow.
And so he is the one who led me to the Lord. His daughter discipled me and then went off to college.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That's awesome.
So it was weird. Anyway, went to college. God did amazing things. We were young and dumb, and we started Bible studies out of the dorms, worked with InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, actually started the Baptist Student Union there back in the day. And I thought I was going to be a journalist. But in the middle of all that, in those Bible studies in that ministry, I was told I had what they call the Timothy calling, which is when you're too dumb to see it, but everybody else does. And so a pastor had a conversation with me, surrendered to ministry, started working for a church there, went to seminary, and it's been great. God has broken the chains of addiction, abuse. I've been married to my wife for 32 years.
Better get that one right.
I did. Yeah, I got that one right. To be straight up, both my boys grew up in a church, still love the Lord, are serving the Lord, are working for the church, and they're even working for the church they grew up in.
Wow.
So couldn't be any more blessed.
That's amazing. I was just listening to a guy talking about John and how much of revelation John got. And yet he still says, "My greatest joy is my children walk in faith."
Amen.
And I know for quite a few of our folks, especially in ministry, that can be a challenge. That making sure your children are in church. Sometimes the expectation is that they're there for everything, just like you're there for everything, just like your wife runs everything that you don't run.
They're voluntold into every ministry.
Just share for maybe a minute. Are there some specific things that you did as a family, or did you guys sort of back into some things? Look back and go, hey, actually, we did this. We didn't maybe do it intentionally, but in the moment, we just knew it was the right thing to do to allow your kids to flourish in that way.
It was a both and. I think both stuff we intentionally did, and there were some things like, oh, thank goodness the Lord takes care of fools and children. But one of the things, when I came to work 23, 24 years ago at the church I'm at right now, I literally said, you're hiring me, not my wife. Right? And so no expectations will be put on her. And if you ever, because I had come out of a difficult situation, and this church has been a blessing for 20 plus years, but I said, if you ever make it difficult for my children to come to know the Lord, I'll be gone. And I said, I'm not raising pastors' kids. I'm raising kids just like you are. And we took that off the table. There was only one time in 20 years where one person said, well, they're the pastor's son. They should act differently. I'm like, no, ma'am. And we went toe to toe, and she left the church, and somebody got mad about it. I'm like, you know the rules. And in other words, we were refusing to offer our children up on this altar of ministry. Just not going to. But here's the blessing. A lot of stuff we didn't know, because you do it first time around, right? You don't usually get to go back and do it
again. That's why you have a second one.
Well, ours were 2 years and two by two, 2 years apart. And we had something that I'm in now the 24th year of, so the whole time they were alive, called the Eagle Retreat. And I ran it. It's a ministry kid only retreat. And half the retreat is listening to them and hearing what's going on. There could not have been a better gift for our household. From the time our boys were toddlers, we were hearing from teenagers what it's like to be a ministry household, what they expect, what they don't expect. And it was gold for us to be able to handle things well. And our boys would say, we'd skip mission trip, we'd skip camp, anything, but Eagle Retreat, so we're not missing that.
Wow.
And matter of fact, my youngest son met his wife at Eagle Retreat, proposed to his wife at Eagle Retreat, and then got married at the campground where they do Eagle Retreat. That's how important that was. Because it was just a gold mine of saying, here's what you don't know that you can learn from other families. It was great. Right.
Wow. So talk about just those early years. You guys are in Kansas. And so talk about those early years at Crosspoint and just some of the things that you had to navigate early on. You talked about setting some pretty clear boundaries for your family.
Yeah.
What are some maybe clear boundaries that you could let some rural pastors feed into, play off of, and go, hey, these are some things that we said early on. These are non-negotiables for us as a family, or these are non-negotiables for us as a church if we're going to reach this community that's right around us.
Yeah, I love that. When I came on board, part of that, my wife's not an employee, is we gave the top 10 reasons not to vote for me. And I actually kept them on my door for a year. So it seems like a negative way to start, but really was coming out of a difficult environment, and we were a little shell-shocked. And this church loved on us in a way that, because we were upfront about that. One of the blessings of Crosspoint in the early years that I didn't see until hindsight was our seniors. Now, normally, you get stories about, man, they're dragging their feet. That's very difficult. Let me just tell you, I had a guy named Earl Ditchin, and 94 years old at the time of the story, taller than I am. He was 6'6", a big old retired farmer, lay preacher. And he came at me one day. We'd grown from a handful of a dying neighborhood church to we're like 300 or 400 people in 2 services. And people are coming in wearing shorts and tank tops from the park next door. And there's kids running around the church with no shoes on. Very not Southern Baptist. You know what I'm talking about? And Earl comes up next to me wearing suit and tie, just pulls himself close. And we're looking out, and I'm not making eye contact with him. He's not looking at me. And he goes, Pastor, I didn't understand a word you said this morning. You talk so fast. He says, and this church is like a zoo. He goes, but look at all these young families. You keep doing what you're doing. And he looked at me and goes, I'm going to Sunday school, which means I'm retreating in. And that was the attitude of our seniors. And so where that comes from, the Lord has to do that. But here's one of the things we did. Instead of fighting against, we poured into those seniors. We had a Triple L club, Live, Laugh, Love. And I played my saxophone for them every month that they met. And I did all their devotionals for them. And I drove the bus when they wanted to go see the Gaithers and stuff like that. So much so that I would tell them, I know that's not your favorite worship. Thanks for partnering with me on this. Dan Sutherland of the Purpose Driven Network, he told me, he said, ask this question a lot. What do we need to do to reach your grandkids?
Yeah.
And boy, when you phrase it that way, they're like, oh, we need to do this and we need to do that. And so fostering and pastoring and loving your seniors who've given time and energy and prayer and money to this is really important. But then, just one more of an early thing. This one I saw in hindsight, but is now a part of our rhythms that we're going to talk about, is you need to protect what we call day parts. Every day has a morning, an evening, and an afternoon, and the church doesn't own all three. So let me give you an example. Here's what a lot of guys do with midweek services. They go in early because they need to get ahead of it. So they work on their message for that night. And then they work all afternoon into committee meetings that lead right up to church. And their family goes home and they stay for parking lot meetings. And very often they leave before they saw their kids in the morning and they come back after their kids are already in bed. So we made the decision that I've got to be there at in night. And if I'm not prepared, I'm going to be thinking about it. So I go in the morning and I took the afternoons off. This was my pattern. From noon to 6, I was not at the church on Wednesdays. And I went home and Kathy and I would get groceries. And the first time I picked up our kids after school, they're like, why is he here? Like, you can talk to me. I'm in the room. And Mom said, well, he's taking the afternoon off. We would work on homework. We'd play jackpot with the football in the front yard. Then we would go together to church. We say it again. We would go together to church. When they got into youth group, they can invite a friend. We left together and went to Village Inn because it's free pie night at Village Inn on Wednesdays. And my boys both graduated from high school telling me Wednesdays was our favorite day of the week. Pastors' kids saying that. So what am I saying? You have got to draw boundaries. No one's going to do it for you. And it's actually not you getting out of anything. It's you leading and modeling well in a hurry-sick culture. That if you will protect your family by protecting time and holding to standards. Now, not everything's – it's never going to be the same all the time.
Right.
But when one week messes up, that doesn't mean you start a pattern of messing it all up. You go back to it.
So talk a little bit then about some of the pushback maybe you received through the years from ministry leaders that you've shared some of this with, or even with church members early on that said, hey, a pastor ought to be in his office from 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, and or the old joke, well, you only work one day a week anyway, and those sorts of things. So how do you graciously speak the truth in love, but really practically, some of the pushback that you received and maybe some ways, just something real practical that some of our guys could say, hey, I've got a deacon and I already know what that guy is going to say. If I say I'm going to do X, Y, Z, how did you handle some of those specific conversations?
I'm glad you added graciously because my first answer is punch him in the face. Which is not helpful. But no, part of what you have to have are biblical answers. So I deal in my part of the world with farmers. And farmers are notoriously sun up to sundown, 24/7, 365. They just work. And they say, well, I don't get a day off. And this is a hard response. But when I'm talking to a woman versus when I'm talking to a man, if I talk to a man, I'm going to meet a man with what he brings me. Right? You say, we'll be pastoral, but I'm going to meet a man with what he brings me. And if he comes at me and he's like, well, listen, I don't get a day off. I'm going like, your disobedience does not require my disobedience. What are you talking about? Well, you're sinning. The Bible says, front to back, that we are to take a day. And I'm going to take that day because I have to be a model for you and for everybody else in this congregation. And so that's not maybe as gracious as you're looking for. But like I said, I'm going to meet a guy. Now, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I'm really struggling with you. You really need to be here all these days. I go, well, first of all, Sunday's not my Sabbath day because the Sabbath day is a day of rest. And I'm working. I'm working harder today than I do any other day. So I need to take that Sabbath day. And he goes, but we don't get all that time off. We go, you're misunderstanding. For me to be biblically obedient, you have to understand that God said he'll bless 6 days of work. He doesn't say he'll bless 7 days. So I want to give you a better product. I want to give you more spiritual punch by being obedient, letting God bless what we're doing and not just getting what Andy can get for you. Is that helpful?
It's huge. It's huge. We think about some of those rhythms that you established early on and some of those things that you put in place as parameters. You know, the saying used to be, 90 miles an hour with your hair on fire. The thing that I like to say now is like a hummingbird on crack. And it happens not only, by vocational guys that have a family and are trying to do ministry and then they've got to put food on the table. And so they're running two jobs. Sometimes it feels like two full-time jobs.
Right.
But it also happens in some of our larger churches. So talk about where God's brought your church up to this point, what you guys are doing right now, just real briefly, because I know you covered it real well last night, and we'll talk a little bit about it today. But what are some things that you've put in place that help you really think through how to not burn out, how to, and in some cases, flame out? Because we see it all too often. And we think about ways to protect, but we sometimes think about those things too late.
Yeah.
And we don't put them in place early enough.
So I've been at this same church for 24 years, right? And when I came, it was a dying neighborhood church that, when I say dying, there may be some pushback, but it had seen its heyday in the 400s. It was below 100, hadn't had a pastor in a couple years. Was not looking good. And we were not the salvation. Jesus is always the salvation, but we got to be a part of what Jesus did in that church. And to cut a long story short, here we are 24 years later, grew and became a video-driven rural multi-site. Now, one of those words will tick everybody off. That's the way that works. So I'm not here to sell rural, video, or multi-site. But we became a rural video-driven multi-site. We now have 14 locations, average about 4,500 people a weekend, and God's just done an absolutely amazing thing. So there are lots of ways that we have tried to foster health in our pastoral staff and model good examples of rhythms. And one of those pieces is what we call a sabbatic weekend. So there's multiple levels for this. It's not a Sabbath weekend. We call it a sabbatical weekend because it's not a commanded Sabbath, but it's built on the model of every seventh. Okay. So every seventh weekend, if you're a pastor, we don't want you on duty. Preaching pastor, I'm off. Location pastors preach. Location pastors, they have to have somebody else be there, and they need to. We encourage them not to even go to their own location on a seventh weekend. Wow. And so this does several things. First of all, they talk about a crisis of leadership. We don't have no leaders coming up. Well, no one's going to step up if you don't step over. You have to have a regular rhythm of being able to create space to disciple others, whether it's preaching or doing announcements or leading in worship or whatever those are. And pastors are notorious. We'd work 24/7, 365 if you let us. If we were unchecked, most guys are going to burn the candle at both ends. So every 7 weeks, at that weekend, you're off. Here's the second thing that it does. Not only does it create space for others to step up, but it creates margin for you. Now, are you a list guy? If you have stuff, did you put it on a list?
Absolutely.
Do you like checking things off a list?
Have
you ever put things on a list just so you can check it off?
Yeah,
okay, we've done that.
Absolutely.
And have you ever had a list where you almost finished the list, but you move some stuff from the bottom of that list over to the next list?
100%.
Okay. Sometimes, if you'll look, those things we're moving over from that list, they've been on the last 10 lists. And we know we're never going to do them. But they're so important we can't let them go because you don't have enough margin. What if 1 week every 7 weeks, so once every other month, I had all the hours of preaching prep back, which is 25 hours that week. And I knew that on that week of that month, I could dedicate 15 hours to that. I've created margin. It's in a regular rhythm that every couple of months I know I can get a bigger thing like that done.
Right.
And then probably the most important part, the third swing at the fence for this, is that it lets your family breathe. It becomes a rhythm that, if I could be really honest with you, is probably going to be more important to your wife and your kids than it is to you.
Yeah.
Imagine as a pastor knowing that every other month we can go visit our in-laws or go to a ball game or sleep in and watch church online like the rest of the godless heathen. We can just do that. We have that. There's this rhythm once every other month, 6 times a year. We get to be a little normal. And the purpose is not just to be gone. It's to refresh. It's to renew. It's to bring health into your family. It is to give space for others. It's to create margin for you to get things done. What an incredible rhythm that becomes.
And so even in creating that kind of space in your calendar and your preaching schedule, let your people hear from somebody else. We're not the end all be all. We're not Jesus. And sometimes I think when in our own attempt to be the guy, we can sometimes step over a line, I think. And our people need to hear from other people.
We create our own problems.
And absolutely. Man, we could do this all day.
Yes, we could. Yes, we could.
But we've got a lunch that we're doing here in just a minute. Thank you so much for being here. Just know, I don't know how often you hear it, just know that there are a bunch of us that really appreciate what you do. We're going to put the link to your website and the Rural Pastor Podcast
that's awesome.
Up on as well. And I know our folks are going to just be blessed hearing from what God's doing in you and your ministry.
Thank you,
and
brother.
we're praying for you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.